Very quickly at a new Executive Council resolution around companies that are in free zones looking to operate in mainland Dubai. We are joined by the lawyer Jayshree Gupta, who is the founder and managing partner of THINC. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, Brandy. How are you?
I am well. Tell me, what exactly has changed here?
So I'm not sure much has changed. A little bit has changed. Let me just go to the backstory of this law. So basically, as you know, Dubai has many free zones where you can operate freely, trade goods, you get customs rebates and things like that in those free zones. Now, you also have mainland, and anybody wanting to do business in the mainland with mainland companies needs to have a trade license. So when you're in a free zone or in a mainland, you need a trade license in either places. But what typically was happening, despite the fact that the government had sent out regulations in 2011, and there are specific licensing rules in the Emirate of Dubai, is there was what we call a gray zone. Now, the gray zone was where free zone companies potentially worked with mainland companies or mainland businesses, but they weren't specifically licensed to do so. So I think this law is a great move towards more accountability, more transparency, and also giving a conduit to free zone companies to be able to bid for local work, to be able to do Dubai government work, etc., by being able to either apply for a permit or being able to apply for a proper license to do mainland Dubai work. So hopefully that clarifies a little bit why this new regulation could be very good for, enforcement of the rules that were previously sort of what I called the grey zone.
Okay, and as you say, licenses and permits coming from the DET. What kind of licenses and permits are they?
So it's not entirely clear yet. They're going to give you 1 year to comply, but basically I think this will be two things. One will be if you're doing some work in the mainland as a free zone company, you would be allowed to take sort of a smaller permit, or probably a less expensive permit. And then if you're doing like a full-blown kind of, most of your clients are in the mainland, etc., you probably need to have a trade license. But what typically happened is that you had to reapply every time you were a free zone company onto the mainland. But here it sort of kind of now links your license, links your existence, but allows you to operate both in the free zone and in the mainland.
Will companies need to physically set up a new branch?
So I suspect, that is part of like the play here, right? Because your visas and things like that are usually linked to how much space you have and how many people you can accommodate. So I suspect what will happen is if you have a permit, you probably won't be allowed to have visas. And I think if you have a license, you'll probably be allowed to have visas. And I think the other thing to clarify here is I think the government also wants to ensure there is, financial separation between the free zone company and any of its mainland business. Obviously, we have corporate tax that's rolling out. Everybody needs to comply to register by the 31st of March, etc. So I think this would be another way to capture financial records or financial, growth of all these companies, free zone and mainland.
Which was one of the things, actually, that I did have a question about, because part of this new set of rules is that you need to keep separate free zone and non-free zone accounts if you are doing business in both. But being in a free zone doesn't necessarily exclude you from tax. So why do you think that is?
So, Brandy, that's a very good question. Obviously, we'll see when the tax regime rolls out. But the issue is that many free zone companies, like, say, for example, take Jebel Ali. You may be a Jebel Ali company that doesn't do any work that touches Dubai. You could simply be a transshipment type of company, which is what Jebel Ali set out to be, a transshipment zone. So again, I think from a tax perspective, you may not be taxed locally because your business isn't local. And if you did want to do local business, this allows you to legally do mainland local business, supply to the local market, provide services to the local market. I think it's also great for consultancies and other people who've always been in this sort of like, between the two worlds, who can clarify now that they actually have a permit to advise on mainland.
What about operating outside Dubai?
The rules haven't changed for that. This regulation is obviously a Dubai regulation. So if I wanted to set up a branch of a UAE entity or a free zone entity outside of the Emirate of Dubai, then I would have to apply, to the Dubai or to the Abu Dhabi licensing authority or to the Ajman licensing authority or whoever that might be to have a separate license.
Okay, so you mentioned there that companies have a year's grace period on this. What do they need to be thinking about, though, and doing?
I think they need to be really, really clear who their clientele is. They need to be super clear if they are working on the mainland, the kind of services they're providing on the mainland. And if they're not doing very much on the mainland, maybe they need to segregate their business on in the free zone side and then decide they're not working on the mainland. Now, my experience as a lawyer for 30 years in the country has shown that most businesses in the free zone do touch the mainland in some form or shape. So I think that's really important. One has to sort of, introspect as an entity, see what you're doing, see what kind of licenses you need, because all of this will tie very much into, as I said, the tax regime that, will be obviously has already been enforced.
Okay, 1 minute left with you. You mentioned there a few things that we're still waiting for details on. Generally, how legislation gets announced here, we get the broad brushstrokes first. What will you be listening for next?
I think I would be listening for basically clarification on how I go and get these permits, whether they can be online, whether they need to be in person. Do I need to meet a certain criteria for having a permit? Do I need to have the criteria for having a permit versus the license? Because as a lawyer, I'm going to have so many people coming to me and trying to comply. And the other thing is, I think we would need clarity around freelancers, because Dubai is becoming a real hub for people moving here, whether it's influencers or whether it's people in real estate, etc., or people who in the creative side doing things. And their work probably touches companies in the free zone and in the mainland. So it's going to be interesting to see how many permits and licenses can I possibly need? How many permits and licenses will I be allowed to have? And what does it mean for me in terms of paying for office space, paying for visas, paying for tax? And which one can I say is sort of like the parent entity? So these are the kinds of questions I'm sure I'm going to get.
Jayshree Gupta, thank you for answering some of ours this morning, though. Founder and managing partner of THINC, the in-house company. Lawyer speaking to us this morning about those changes and rules for freelance entities who are dealing with mainland clients. More on that to come on the show this morning, but we appreciate your time.